Welcome back to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. I'm Joe, joined by Mel.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast, where we guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
I know this episode's going out a couple weeks after Thanksgiving, but Mel, I think we learned some lessons yesterday. So before we get into today's topic, which is about winners and losers, winning and losing mindset, and how to help teach kids how to handle those different emotions that go with playing a sport and winning and losing, let's talk about Thanksgiving.
Okay.
What is something that you learned, as we're recording this was yesterday, but what is something that you learned on Thanksgiving that you'd like to share with the audience that you think will help them down the road?
I learned this after the fact today because I saw somebody post that they included their kids in the preparation of the Thanksgiving meal. And I really loved that, and I want to do that next year. So I usually take on the responsibility of doing all the cooking, but I really enjoy it. It's not a chore for me. I really enjoy it. But I want to include next year the kids to cook part of it. I could have taken that opportunity to teach them how to roast a whole... We did chicken, not turkey. I don't know if that's taboo, but...
Not team turkey. Chicken's way better. Everyone knows if turkey was good, they would have roasted turkeys all the time, not just once a year.
So that's what I learned personally. I want to include them more in that process.
What do you think will be some of the roadblocks of including them in the process, and how would you overcome them?
I think the biggest roadblock is going to be me. You knew you were going to say
Correct.
It's me not being a control freak if something doesn't turn out quite right. So it's going to be me, and I'm going to have to make sure that I'm willing to make compromises because I think they should also have a say in what is going to be made.
And I can sense people's hesitation about it because many people are probably like Mel, that it's just easier to do yourself and you get it exactly how you want it if you do it yourself. However, it's probably more valuable to sacrifice some of that so that your kids can be elevated. I had a great experience once when I went to a friend's house, Vince and Vanessa in New Jersey. One of his daughters, I'm forgetting which one, we were talking about it even recently, made dinner for us, and she put on a huge spread, and at the beginning I don't think she was into it. Then all of a sudden she came out with 5 different courses, got into it, and did an amazing job. And so while there is friction up front to get that process started, I think it can be very valuable.
It's also friction to be able to let go of certain traditions. So if you're used to having all these certain foods, I think it's important if one of the kids says, hey, what if we make this? Am I going to say no just because it's not what we usually eat? And also pushing the kids to do something. If I gave it to Logan, he'd be like, I'll buy a can of cranberry and I'll just open it. No, it's going to have to be something that you go through some kind of a process to make.
I can see us ending up with a chicken that you make, some popcorn, some yogurt mixed with oatmeal, and some carrot sticks.
Now you're making me regret my decision.
You got to live with those things, though, so they can elevate them. It's in business, there's this friction when you pass off a job to someone else and they don't immediately do it as good as you, and then you get all, number one, fired up. Number two, you get a little bit self-righteous, I do it so good. You have to give a margin of error because if you've been doing it for a decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, you better be doing it good than they will on their first attempt. So you have to give people leeway. You got to give your kids leeway. You got to eat some crap food sometimes that might come out burnt, and just smile and say, hey, thank you for making this. But that's part of being a parent. Who really cares about the food in the long run? You won't even remember it, but you will remember that a child made it for you.
The other thing that I think comes out of this, almost you don't expect it to, you learn a bit more about each kid. Because, so this is a silly example, but I make a shake for each kid in the morning, and my expectation is that they rinse the cup. When they're done, rinse the straw, because obviously if it dries out, maybe that's not obvious, but if it dries out, it becomes much harder to clean it later. And one of them does it consistently, does a good job. Another one I have to always remind. So I shouldn't say I don't get upset. Sometimes I do get upset about it. But it tells me something about the child. Hey, this kid needs a little bit more support in this area. He needs to understand a little bit more about either helping the process, because later on it's going to be a pain for me to clean. But my whole point here is sometimes when you do something like this, you let your kids cook something or bake something or whatever, you might learn a little bit more about their personalities, about areas of support they might need. And I think that's a cool thing to learn about.
What I would suggest, moving off from the cooking side, is we talked about this a lot with traditions. And Mel even said the word tradition a little funny a couple minutes ago because she knew that's not really how we roll. We do values, not traditions. And those are two different things, because values you can apply to situations. Traditions are like one robotic thing that you have to do. Sometimes it's enjoyable. Sometimes it's not robotic. Maybe that's not fair to say, but it just feels like that for some people. And then everyone gets dragged in. All right, let's do this one thing that'll please one person, and you go through the motions. But you're free to do whatever the heck you want. So we did a morning ruck. I know Mel loves her Thanksgiving meal, loves the sweet potatoes with the marshmallows, loves the roasted chicken. She's getting like the little sauce out of it, like squirting it on the top every once in a while.
It's called basting.
Yeah, doing all those kind of things. Getting really into it. And we like to do something that makes the day memorable with a physical accomplishment. But I wasn't going to, Mel, you got to go. But no, she wanted to do her thing. I took the kids. Across the four of us, we put about 200 pounds on our back. I think I had 100, Everett had 10 or 15, Henry had some weight, and Logan had some weight in their backpack. We did 1 mile, 1 mile hike down at Garden of the Gods, out, put the stuff off, they climbed some of the rocks, put it back on, walked back to the truck. They all felt so accomplished because for Everett at 5, it was his first like weighted hike. He felt so cool about it. It was fast. We were out of the house to give Mel some breathing room. It made the day memorable by doing in a physical accomplishment. And so we did the ruck, got back, and then we had dinner.
And to make a note about tradition, so I think traditions can be very comforting for people. They know what to expect. It's like this nostalgic thing. It's part of why I do the sweet potato casserole, because that's what I had every year. There's nothing wrong with that. I think that's a very nice thing, but you can also create new traditions based on your values. You don't have to repeat traditions just to go through the motions. They should have some kind of a benefit to your current family situation.
Yes, it's more fair to say, because doing something challenging on major days is like one of our quote unquote traditions now.
And then Henry even said, I remember last year, because I did a pull-up challenge.
How many pull-ups?
1,000?
1,000 pull-ups.
And then when you mentioned doing a challenge, Everett was like into it immediately, because he knows nothing else. Like, he knows that's what we do.
Everett, the 5-year-old, we brought him over. I said, hey, today's a big day. Let's make it memorable with a challenge. What do you think? Everett's immediately, hey, maybe an incline, maybe a hike at Garden of the Gods. And then we put it together. We didn't want to do a full incline. It might take 4 hours. We'd be late to dinner, and that would influence what Mel wants to do. So let's do this other thing instead. But it got his feedback, and we decided on it together as a family. And he felt powerful for being able to contribute to that conversation.
But really, his contribution is based on the fact that we consistently bring up the idea of doing challenges. And not just the idea, but actually doing them.
He got his dinosaur backpack out and stuffed
So
weights in it and put it on, powering down the road. Very cool. Okay, there's a couple thoughts for you on the holiday. Include the kids in making things. Maybe you don't want to roll the dice and put it on a holiday. Do it on a weekend. Like, you don't have to. Maybe still touch and go for Mel. I don't know if she'll do Thanksgiving next year.
I think if I thought of it ahead of time and prepped it a bit more, I think it'd be fine. If it was last minute, it would not work. But
all right, let's talk about winning and losing. I'll put down my kombucha. I gotta say that for people watching on YouTube. Don't think they're drinking wine. Middle of the day recording a podcast. It's some homemade green tea kombucha. It does look. Yours looks like wine.
it has cherry juice.
Oh, okay.
Yours is the same color.
I know. Henry had a challenging basketball season, and it's taken me a few weeks to even talk about it. As a former athlete and basketball coach, it was difficult to watch and parent through. Watch as in it, don't really say anything. Just stand off in the corner myself. I have a certain perspective about the effort that should be put in the organization. And I also have a certain perspective like, hey, if they're unskilled, that comes. If they miss shots, that's fine. But if they don't know how many people should be on the court, that's not fine to me. And the 6th grade level, you should know some basic skills and have some understanding of that sort of stuff. And so Mel relayed one of the coach's messages to me, which got me all heated. But I didn't really say anything to the kids. Yes. I don't know. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. The team stunk. And they were regularly blown out by 30, 40, 50 points by their peers, kids of the same age group. They weren't playing bigger schools or anything like that. They were just blown away because the other kids were organized. They knew how to do a layup line. They knew how to do other things like a normal team would know how to do. And someone asked the coach if they won, and she said, we won Emotionally. I was like, what the hell does that mean? You won emotionally. You got blown out by 40, and the kids are like running around in circles and don't have any concept of the game, which is the part that I care about more than the actual outcome of the score at a 6th grade level. But it becomes challenging because Henry sees his team getting blown out, and he starts to feel a frustration that it's so disorganized, and he hates losing, and it would make him grumpy for a couple of days after. Is that fair to say, Mel?
It is, and that's the part I struggle with because he'll come home and be really grumpy about it, and I want him to just, what's the good that can come out of it, or what's something that you can take from it? But what really struck me, because now, to give you a little background, I did not play sports. I did not know that there was 5 players on a team until I started watching this season. So I don't have that perspective that you have, and of course I mostly watch just my kid and see his progress, which he did make. But I would expect him to blow past the loss and just, hey, what good came from it? But then I said that to you one day, and I think I was telling you how grumpy he was being during the evening debrief one night. And he's like, you know what? He should be angry about losing. And that really struck me because I didn't think about it that way.
It is so tough to juggle this. And that's why I want to talk about it with you today, because I don't even have the perfect answer. I can only share what we've been doing and working on. And it will be a work in progress, because how do you teach your children that losing isn't the ideal outcome, getting them to respect the things that they need to learn and still have fun? You say, hey, losing's not fun. They lose, but you tell them, hey, play the game because it's fun. But then they lose and they say, that's not fun. And it is tough, Mel.
I think it also, part of this for Henry at least, is that he wants to do his best all the time. Like, he gets frustrated when he doesn't have a skill. So he'll come home now and he plays basketball over in the other room. We have a really tall ceiling and we have a hoop on the door for him. I'd say he plays 3 hours a day, and I'm not joking. So the fact that he is, I think good is coming from all of this, because it's not like he's coming home and saying, forget it, I'm not going to bother trying anymore. He is trying to get his skill set stronger. So for other kids who might not have that same mentality or go home and practice all the time, I just wonder if that's just like a personality thing. Is that because their families aren't pushing them, they're just saying, it's okay, no big deal? I don't know what it is. But
I guess that is what I want to get to, Mel, and that is the kind of the normal way to parent, because you want to move your kid away from pain as soon as possible, and they come off the floor getting crushed. I'm not even over 40-4. Like, they're like not even putting up any shots in a full game, which I would expect at the 2nd and 3rd grade level, which is age appropriate. But at 6th grade, you should be like have some concept of what's going on. Either way, I'm no longer going to defend my grumpiness. I'm grumpy about it. So they come off the floor, they're dejected, they're frustrated, and a normal reaction for parents to go up and say, "Oh no, that's okay." What do you do, Mel? What are some of the normal things?
Yeah, things like that's okay, or things like, oh, you'll get him next time, or don't feel bad, just shake it off. Oh, you're just in 6th grade, like, it's no big deal. I think it's a lot of times exactly what you're saying. You try to just move past the pain, try to make them feel better. And I don't know if some kids, I watch some kids leave and they're just like, well, okay, whatever. Henry, he needs hours. We usually stay for the other 2 games. After that, there's like 7th grade and 8th grade. And he told us himself, I was so angry at the entire time during the 7th grade team. He sits up in the top with his friend and just puts his hood up. But I want to be like, hey, knock it off. At least you did your best, or something like that. But really, he just needs to process it. Maybe that's what people say. You did your best, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's usually a lie.
But I know my kid, so I don't say that.
Yeah.
I instead have to just not say anything, or I try to point out one thing he did really well.
I think it's all good. It is tough. I choose not to lie anymore, which is, oh, you did your best. Well, no, your best would have been doing some layups in practice and learning these things. That would have been like, you can put full effort in the game, but your best would include preparing for the game.
But what if their best wasn't brought out in them during practice? I wasn't at practice, but I don't want to play the blame game.
And I'm not. I'm gonna take the blame for this one. I'm not gonna even talk about coaches, parents, any of that other stuff. Just try to deal with how we're managing it. So he comes off all dejected, and this is a lesson that I learned when I was a freshman in high school. I was a bigger kid at a small high school. This is my first year playing football. I had played for 2 weeks, and they're like, all right, you're playing varsity football. We couldn't afford to play like town football because this stuff was expensive. You got to drive it all around. We always played the school sports, and there was no modified football at the school, or like 7th and 8th grade football. I don't know what it's called in all the states. And so my freshman year was my first year ever playing the game. And like, I watched football. I didn't even fully know the positions. Like, all right, lineman, go over here. I'm like, I don't know where to go. I just follow the crowd. So it wasn't based on talent. It was just that I was a taller, semi-athletic kid at a smaller school. So, hey, you're going to play varsity. So it's my first game up on varsity. The varsity team is not that great. It's a small, maybe 18 kids on the team. I think you need 18 to field a team even. I know there's 11 people on the field at the same time, but you have a minimum roster number so that people don't get hurt. And there was these 2 new coaches, and they were hard. They were out of college football. One was an All-American from West Point, military guy, and one was a defensive end from Alabama. And they were hard-nosed, do things right, intense football coaches. I did learn a lot from them. It didn't always work out for them and their methods, but I took a lot from them. So I'm thankful I had them. And we played the first game that I was up. I think we were playing a school called Oneonta. They blew us out like 56-0. They have a cannon that they shoot off every time they score because it's up by American Legion. They ran out of ammo. They scored so much on us. And on the bus ride home, people are like laughing, joking. Our bus ride back to the school, and the coaches got very upset. Like, what do you guys have to laugh about? You just got crushed. And I remember that lesson, like, hey, we had to sit and think. And as painful as it is to sit and think and not just be able to move past something, that's when you figure out, like, hey, what can I do differently next time so that this doesn't happen? What should I have done before that I can now do before the next game? And you have some reflection time versus just trying to move past it and immediately be back to the feel goods. There is a dichotomy here. There is like I tell Henry, like, you can be grumpy, but your attitude can't affect those around you. You can't take it out on anybody else. So if he's like hood on, like, I'm not going to let you snip at your younger brother just because you lost a game. Like, you don't need to be that much in the weeds. But also I try to guide him through that reflection process by asking him questions. So he'll get upset. I'm like, after the game, how you feeling? He's like, I feel terrible because we got blown out. Okay, like, losing stinks. I acknowledge that. Like, I'm not going to say, oh, it's okay. What'd you learn? We'll get to that. But I think children need the reinforcement that how they are feeling is okay. Like, you feel bad when you don't win. And that can go too far. But it can also be a positive thing if they reflect on that and they change the outcome for the next time or down the road or to a different application in the classroom, different application in a different sport. But I think you need to let them stew a little bit so that they can process it themselves. And that's what you said.
And like you said, stew, but with boundaries.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take it out on other people around you, like, that's not okay. So it's a matter of, you have and I taught this lesson to the kids at a young age. Let's say someone has a really hard day at work. They're really upset. They come home and they start taking it out on their kids.
Yeah.
So I want them to understand they aren't actually mad at their kids. They are emotionally unintelligent and they're not able to compartmentalize and direct the anger where it belongs. So I think that's an important lesson for kids to know from a very young age. Like, you can be angry and you have to make sure you are directing that anger at the right place. And this really has to be role modeled as well by parents. And sometimes that might require, like, going for a walk or cooling off, or if someone feels better after they talk to someone, or whatever the case may be. But it's important for them to learn that emotional lesson that, like, you can be mad, but please recognize what you're doing with that anger.
Yeah, so much going on here. And after the last game, he was upset. Like, we lost. And I say, good. Like, I don't want you to love losing. I'm not going to I'm glad you're not happy right now, because you know who loves losing? Losers. People who don't try at things. Now, there is a difference between losing and losers. Losing gives you an opportunity to improve your skills and learn something. Losers just don't ever try and they just quit on it. So we have those conversations. Like, just because you lost a game doesn't make you a loser. What would make you a loser? If you're happy-go-lucky, don't care, never do anything to get better, and just get crushed again and leave the floor smiling, go get some pizza and some Doritos and a soda pop, sit down and eat it and just joke. Like, that's loser behavior, because you're not doing anything to improve your team. You're actually hurting the kids around you who actually want to get to winning. kids around you might have lost, but they're not losers because they're putting in the effort and they're showing up and they're doing their best. But someone who just quits on it and brings the whole team down, that's where I draw the line for the kids. So they know that most of their friends are working hard and they're trying to do good. And so they see the positive, but I'm not going to lie to them and say, oh, that's fine. Like it stinks to lose. Like winning is awesome. Losing stinks. You need to be a good sport. And part of winning is losing. Like for winning to exist, there has to be losing. We lost tons of games. Like I didn't go out there, like that high school team I told you, we only won one game that season. Next season we won a bunch. In the next 2 years, we lost the majority of our basketball team. We lost a lot of games. And so I'm speaking from the perspective of losing a lot and being frustrated a lot. And I didn't like it when people were like, oh, that's okay. Like then why am I so upset? Is something wrong with you or something wrong with me? Because this situation doesn't make sense to me that you're telling me this is okay, but I feel like garbage and I don't want this to happen again. Then how is it okay? And so kids aren't unintelligent.
So since you have experience in this, what did you...
Losing a lot? Yep. Thank you, Mel.
What helped you then gain perspective back then? What did you have a mentor who you would bounce that off of? Did you talk to teammates? Was it an internal conversation you had?
No, I think it was more role models, but not people I know, where I saw people like Olympians overcome things and win and know it's possible to go through hard times and figure it out and still win and have role modeling like that. And knowing that winning required effort and work, that's what makes it so awesome. And so I had to be honest with myself. A lot of times I didn't put in the effort and work. I just was relying on my God-given talents to carry me through an activity. And actually it was a good awakening for me to lose some and be humbled. And then you get to win. Like it's an amazing process if we are able to navigate it without becoming depressed, like when you lose, like we're talking about, but also not being just assuming you're going to win. And then if you don't, you just don't do anything to reinforce it.
So I want to hear more about what you talk about with Henry after. So we talked about how you reinforce the fact that this feeling is okay. It sucks to lose. It's okay to be mad about it. So then what? When do you move to what can we do about it?
Yeah, so shortly after, I don't say a lot. I think the more words, the more it feels like you're patronizing the child. Say less things that matter more. After the last game, I said just what I said. Okay, who loves losing? Losers. You shouldn't love this feeling. Is there anything you want to do tomorrow? I'm not going to say right now, usually. Sometimes it is right now. Like they lost a soccer game. And he's, I felt slow. Like I want to run a couple sprints. Now sprints after a soccer game aren't going to make him that much faster, but mentally he is taking a step towards a more positive outcome. So I'm going to do it with him. So I let him choose. And we'll do, what do you want to do? He's, let's work out for 30 minutes. And then I want to do skills training for 30 minutes. Sure, I'll do that with you. And I let him choose the path. But and this goes with depression, this goes with losing something, like you have to have a path towards progress. So what's the next step you want to take? It's likely not in that 1 hour after the game, but it's probably 6 hours one day at the most later, where you bring it up and then you bring the conversation to a more positive conclusion.
And I do think, personally, I mentioned this earlier, how for me, I have to hold back saying things like it's okay. And when he comes home and if it's 3 hours later and he's still grumpy, like I don't enjoy that, but I know him, I know he'll get past it, but I have to hold back the desire or the knee-jerk reaction to just try to make it better for him. I mean, I can't make him a better basketball player. I mean, I can sit with him. He can, tell me to bounce pass it to him. Or yesterday you were doing something that I don't remember what it was called. Where you throw it and then you make a sound.
Basketball?
No.
I know. It was an alley-oop.
Is that
and
an
you're
official
like an
word?
Elevated pass? Why? Like, it is official.
So there's ways where unathletic me, can be supportive of his skill building.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it, from my strengths perspective, is emotionally not reacting and giving him the space that he needs. Because oftentimes we're just trying to solve our discomfort. Maybe we think we're solving the child's discomfort, but it's really ours.
My last point would just be on, this is all about emotional intelligence and regulation, is to keep it from going off the guardrails on either side. So not going too far in one direction, not going too far in the other direction, teaching, hey, there's nothing we can do now to change that event that just happened, but we can work on future events. And keeping them from those lows and the roller coasters and the highs, you do need to help and support them. And it does come from a good place when parents are like, oh, don't worry about it. They're just not sure what to say. And so I get that they want their child to feel better. However, hopefully this conversation gives you a little bit more of a path in some different ways where you can have some honest discussions and meet your child where they're at, and don't tell them that it's okay when they're feeling terrible, because then that creates friction again, because they're not sure who is right, them or their feelings. You say, hey, your feelings are lying to you. It's fine to lose this. It doesn't help them either. And so it is a juggling act. It is tough for parents. I do have respect for parents that put their kids into activities that maybe they didn't play themselves like you did. I can tell a lot of these other parents never played basketball, just based on the conversations that are happening in the stands. And I just sit there quietly. I politely clap when something happens. I'm not a loud person at games or activities. I just want to be there to support. And I understand that people are coming from a different perspective. And so hopefully the well-intentioned, hey, just forget about it, turns into, hey, what can we do about this? And so that's what I hope you can take from this conversation. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Strong Family Project podcast. Visit us at strongfamilyproject.com, where you can get the 7 steps of the path, get your values all outlined and set up before the next year starts.